Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Century Club Business Series of this school year. My name is Cici Beltran, and I currently serve as the Olin Alumni Board President. I am a graduate of the BSBA program class of 2004. I currently serve as the Director of Marketing at Build-A-Bear Workshop when I'm not here at Olin. I'm delighted to welcome you here today for our Century Club speaker series featuring none other than Mark Taylor, our dean here at the Olin Business School. We're also very privileged to have many people joining us from across the country via webinar. You'll see lots of tech in the room, which is great. Olin has hosted this business series for over 35 years to connect alumni, their guests, recent graduates, Olin faculty, staff, and students with the business community. Our next Century Club series will be on November 14th. We hope you will join us. We will be featuring Professors Peter Baumgarten and Abram Van Engen, who will speak on the topic of morality and markets. We also hope you'll save the date in the future for the Olin Celebration Weekend, which will take place in April from the 3rd to the 4th. During that weekend, we will be celebrating our distinguished alumni, emerging leaders, as well as graduate reunion celebrations. There will be tons more coming to you regarding that weekend, as it's sure to be very exciting. As always, this is a very busy time at Olin, lots of activity going on. We hope to see you on campus again soon. And if you have any questions about upcoming events, please feel free to reach out to anybody from the Alumni and Development team after the presentation. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our dean. Mark Taylor was appointed dean in December of 2016. Prior to joining us here, he was the dean and professor of finance at Warwick Business School from 2010 to 2016. Please, a round of applause for Dean Taylor.
Thank you, Cici. And thank you all for coming today. And also thank you to those of you who are watching us via live streaming. So I wanted to take this opportunity to give you an update on the school, on our programs, and ultimately how we continuously want to be engaging with our Olin community. Always engaging, always Olin. To note, we have many exciting things happening at Olin. So while you'll hear a lot about what's going on, this is by no means comprehensive, I should say. So if you want to know more about what's going on at the school, please feel free to grab me afterwards or connect with me by phone or email. I invite you to do that warmly. I am really, really excited about the energy here at Olin, our faculty, our staff, our students, and our friends and alumni, you. You all make this a wonderful community. And it's wonderful to be part of that community always. So, this summer we launched our full-time Mba Reboot. And just to refresh your memory, this is basically a new semester that's bolted on, an international semester that's bolted on to our MBA program. So instead of beginning in August, September, it now begins at the end of June, beginning of July, beginning with orientation here in St. Louis, before moving to Washington, D.C., to the Brookings Institution, where we have strong historical links, which we'll talk to you a little bit more about later, where they receive briefings on international business, the global business environment from Washington experts. Then it moves to the whole cohort, 100 or so, move to Spain, where they learn about doing business in Europe and start doing live case studies, actually working with local businesses there on consultancy projects. It's very important that we don't think of this as, or we don't conceive this as academic tourism, right? It's not just having a classroom in a different location. It's actually getting something out of being in that environment, developing emotional intelligence, actually learning about how local businesses operate in that part of the world. Then after a couple of weeks in Barcelona, the whole cohort picks up again and then goes to China and does the same thing in Shanghai. So the first 8 weeks or so of the program are spent pretty much on the road before getting back here, being completely. Well, we've heard that. I'll give you some testimonials in a moment, but the The story is that the cohorts really bonded together, and they go through an accelerated phase of that early development. And actually stealing a Mba, as well as having this, developing their cultural intelligence, this boot camp also puts them in a great position to hit the early job market when they get back, right? I mean, believe it or not, MBAs normally arrive here in August, September, and then about a month later they start interviewing for internships and so forth, right? So our students now will have this intensive experience, which actually equips them well to hit that market when they get back. And of course, it equips them well to engage in the rest of their studies. Basically, we had about 100 students on that program, and the class statistics are very interesting. So it set new records for Olin. And indeed recorded an upward bounce in many of our statistics. It is 43% international, or about 60% domestic, put it another way, in terms of students on the program. And that's the most global MBA cohort we've ever had. Should say that 40% or so of international students is spread across a really wide variety of countries. Countries from Africa, countries from Europe, Middle East, and so forth, South America, with no particular dominance of any nationality outside of the United States. It's pretty much 50%, well, 49% gender balance, which is probably one of the strongest in the country. Well, the strongest you can get is 50%, right? But it's pretty much there in terms of that gender balance, which we're very, very proud of. And again, the GPA of 3.5. Which is, and the GMAT, in fact, score is the highest that we've had at the school for about 5 years or more. Underrepresented minorities, about 23%. What's also interesting is that the yield rate on this program. The yield means that the percentage of students percentage of applicants that accepted our offer and enrolled on the program. So that's normally around about in the 20% range. Because, that's not unusual, because people apply to a range of schools, and then so a lot of people will apply to 20, 30 other schools. This year, the yield rate is more like is over 40%, getting towards 50%, right? Which means that many applicants are actually applying to this program because they want this program, and that because of its unique international component. And I think that shows strongly. So I'm going to give you a break from me for a second, actually, because the best way to hear about whether or not our new program is succeeding, at least at this stage, is to hear from the students themselves. And we've got a little testimonial here to tell you a little bit about how they experience it. Could we have the video, please?
Almost any industry you work in, any function, you need to be able to think globally.
Olin's values-based and data-driven approach is the full compendium of resources that effective leaders need to gather data, contextualize it for an ever-increasingly connected global society.
It's a great opportunity for all students to engage in international business with real-world experiences in real-world case studies.
This opportunity to go on a global expedition is the opportunity of a lifetime.
The MBA degree is a generalist degree, so the more you can have different values, be able to look at ideas from different perspectives.
Each of the assignments are specifically tailored to what's going on in each of the global markets to help make this experience really powerful.
But until you are physically in that location, you won't get this experience anywhere else.
Whether or not we are doing a 4-minute TED Talk assignment to help get comfortable in front of the camera in communications class, or touring different museums here in Washington, D.C., doing just a wide variety of really enriching assignments to help make this experience really powerful.
We got to speak to people who are working with the healthcare industry, get more of an in-depth look at those things, because I didn't realize how much I didn't know about healthcare.
It's very interesting because it's about politics. It was nice to learn about it in depth.
think we're in a time where a lot of different perspectives are all coming together.
I got a group of very different individuals than I am, and I learned how to work with them.
You're meeting the real people, you're talking to them, you're understanding the current situation. It feels that you're actually part of something big. It feels that you're actually part of their business.
Being able to go to the wineries and actually see their production and understanding the process and the culture, we would not be able to get that if we were not here.
As we've traveled, we've still had the opportunity for coaching. I have taken advantage of the communication services, which are phenomenal.
Working with the Career Center right now provides a roadmap.
WCC has been helping us understand how what we're learning in the classroom can tie into what we're doing in the real world.
It's intriguing to realize that all the people and organizations within Olin are vested in your success.
The project we just did with Strange Donuts and implementing this new business here in Shanghai spoke to me the most in what I want to do.
So it's really been transformational framework perspective on how you view the world, why do businesses make the decisions that they do.
We got to walk through, the competitive landscape, the actual culture of consumers, and look through how his business model could be implemented here.
My lens on how business was done definitely changed throughout this entire experience. We have traveled to 3 different cities with ever-changing schedules, seeing the way culture works in other countries, learning to be more and more adaptive. So having the diversity of student backgrounds, nationality-wise, has been very helpful.
I think it's extremely important to be globally minded. Business does not operate in a vacuum.
We could see these things happening right away, right in front of you, just in your classroom, because you have people represented for all these cultures that you're learning about.
That diversity really helped me widen my aperture of thought.
I definitely think we have grown individually and definitely as a team.
The Global Immersion program, I've enjoyed every single project we've been able to do. It's exceeded greatly my expectations.
So there we are. I think it's really, really exciting. The early feedback we've had from the students, both anecdotally, but also in terms of an online confidential survey that we conducted with the students, has been extremely positive. So look to this space for further developments in that area. This is what we're sticking with graduate programs. Newest EMBAs are currently in Go Week right now. And our EMBA program is very important to us. In fact, some of the innovations you see here, like at the International Experience, the Brookings Experience in Washington, D.C., was originally pioneered on our Executive MBA program. And in fact, we're thinking about ways we could innovate on that program as well. We're perhaps looking to get some of your advice going forward. And we certainly have a number of alums on the task force that's looking at that right now. But that the latest EMBA class represents 7 countries. And a third of the intake are women, and across a range of industries. PMBA class, again, is the most gender balanced we've had, for about 40% female. And again, represents a large number of countries across citizenship, nationality, and country of origin. And of course, our specialist master's programs, particularly in business analytics, our MS in business analytics and the various tracks that involves in customer analytics and fintech, continues to be very, very popular, and it's growing at a steady pace, and as it has been over the past few years. We are also, of course, continuing to attract the very best and the very brightest to our undergraduate program. This year we have about 160 students on the program. Over 90%, 93% were in the top 10% of their high school graduating class. And the test scores continue to soar, ACTs of 33.8, for example. Here are some other highlights from our undergraduate office. We are making significant strides both in growing the pipeline into our program, and we're offering a lot more global opportunities for undergraduates, and they're taking advantage of it. So something like nearly 3/4 of the class of 2021 has had a meaningful global experience engagement during their time here, for example. So you remember when we've spoken before, another strategic priority for the school early on was to revamp, to have a deep dive into the Career Centre, the Western Career Centre. We started with an analysis from the Boston Consulting Group, which had a deep dive to see what we could do better. Not that there was anything particularly wrong, but given that we are one of the best schools in the world, and we certainly have the strongest, some of the strongest students in the world, it behoves us to provide the best service and preparation for our students and their alumni. And since Jennifer Witten joined us as head of the, particularly says joined us as head of the WCC, we've made really big strides. In fact, some of the points on here, I think we talk about engagement. Let me see this one. Faculty engagement, which is something like about, I say, 41% increase in utilization. Actually, I've got a telegram here. It's now nearly 60% increase in utilization from undergraduates actually using the careers service. And you remember that when we restructured the Career Centre, one of the elements was to develop more of a business development idea, that instead of waiting for companies, employers to come to us, we would actually go out and engage and develop business in some sense, both here in St. Louis and the Midwest, but also on the East Coast, on the West Coast. And we even have a business development officer located in Shanghai, for example. And that's led to significant increases from all of our programs in placements at top employers, places like Microsoft, Amazon, Capital One, and Google. In 2019, we're seeing increased offers for MBA, specialist masters, and BSBAs from a range of top employers, and some employers coming newly into this picture, right? So newly companies that we haven't placed students at before. So, for example, we have an MBA summit coming up soon, which is basically a recruitment fair, but we're specializing for MBAs in certain areas. And new to employers coming to campus are PepsiCo, Gap, Square, and I had to double check this one, the US Secret Service. And I guess that's not a secret, right? Because they told us that they would be advertising. We're also, a number of companies are hosting treks. That's to say, students go out and visit them, in fairly large groups in order to get an idea of what goes on in that industry at that company. And treks that are being hosted by Google, Uber, Square, newly this year, plus others that did so in recent years, like Amazon. We've also, in terms of recruitment, made big strides, further strides in an area it's always been strong at Olin, but it's even stronger, and that's in the area of consulting. So McKinsey's, for example, recently told us that WashU has the second highest interview rate of all schools across the nation, and that's schools, not just business schools. In fact, behind the number one is Princeton. And we've seen an increase in almost all consulting firms hiring our students. So, again, that's an ongoing. We see these are, in some sense, early days. Right, we just finished restructuring the Career Centre. We now have the exact structure. It took us a while to get the new structure into place that we analysed and developed along with the Boston Consulting Group. And we expect to see even further strides and further improvements from a very, very high level already going forward over the next few years. Critical to our vision of providing world-changing business education impact is providing and producing world-changing research. And we've seen some advances, and from a very high level again. Olin has always had a very, very strong research faculty, very, 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 very strong research output. But in fact, we've been able to increase our research productivity over the last 2 years or so, basically with the faculty just thinking about getting their publications out perhaps a little bit faster. And that's led, for example, to the nearly 20-place jump. So the Financial Times ranks business schools throughout the world on various criteria and then aggregates them into an overall ranking. And if they just rank business schools internationally on research productivity in high impactful journals, we jumped about 20 places this year to be placed number 12 in the world. So there's still room for improvement there when we're working on that. But it's also not only about publishing in top research journals, it's also making sure there's high impact, right? So we often talk about being values-based, data-driven at the school, and we have the 5 integrity, collaboration, leadership, diversity, excellence, those values which are hanging in the atrium, which were, here, I like to say, which is true when I came for an interview over 3 years ago, so that's something we haven't changed, those values that are core to Olin. But I sometimes think that one element of that strong culture we have here that sometimes hasn't served us so well is a humility, right? So we need to tell the world a little bit more and be a bit more brash, if you like, about thinking about how our research is really first rate. So we've had a campaign in the school for faculty to think about not only publishing in top academic journals, but also think about how they engage with business and industry and how they get their research known in business in industry. So one of our top professors, Anjan Thacker, for example, this is his new book on the economics of higher purpose, which is about organizational behavior, actually, which is interesting because Anjan is a world-famous finance professor. And he's publishing that. We're having a conference on that in November here at the school. And that book and that work was recently highlighted in a front page, cover page article in the Harvard Business Review, which is a pretty good way of publicizing our research more impactfully amongst the broader business community. We have also launched a new faculty recruitment strategy. So, rather than before I became dean, there was a concentration on just hiring whenever jobs came up within the school, faculty-wise, of hiring rookies straight from graduate school. I wanted to have a mix. We have to carry on hiring rookies. Obviously, we have a duty, a commitment to train the next generation of researchers going forward. But we also wanted to attract mid-career talent, right? So associate full professors who already have a very, very strong track record and want to come and join our very, very strong research faculty here. So this is just one example of Brett Green, who is a rising star in the profession, had full tenured associate professorship at Berkeley. And we're very proud that we were able to attract Brett to join the faculty here at Olin Business School this year. And we have a number of other really strong hires this year, which we're very, very proud of. We've also, and I briefly mentioned this earlier, we'll talk a little bit more about it now, we've expanded our relationship with the Brookings Institution, which is, as the name suggests, a long historical relationship. Going back to the foundation of the Brookings Institution as a branch of Washington University about 100 years or so ago, and then having to float it off for tax reasons, became an independent policy think tank. But we have grown that relationship over the last 2 or 3 years. So we had a relationship where we were helping Brookings with their executive education, which is great, except we were kind of invisible in that relationship, right? It was called Brookings Executive Education, or even B. So we have done a number of things. We have talked about how we want to grow the relationship with the new director of Brookings, General John Allen. We have a really strong relationship. We've actually rebranded our relationship that we do for them. It's called, you'll see the new logo there, WashU at Brookings. It actually is, we're up front actually talking about the relationship. And somewhere, whenever we use that logo, in the bottom page it says a partnership between Washington University in St. Louis and the Brookings Institution. We've also increased our physical presence in DC. So we actually have a whole floor of one of the Brookings Institution buildings now. We've gone from about 2,000 square feet to over 12,000 square feet. And that picture you see there is a snapshot of one of the flat floor classrooms. They have all lecture theaters there, which can take, we have 2 lecture theaters which can take about 60, 70 students each, or they open up into a flat floor. Combined can take up to 150 students, plus other office space there. And we have some faculty that are based half in DC. At the top there, you see that's a picture of Kelly Bean, who is who we hired away from University of Virginia Darden School of Business. She was head of executive education there. Highly experienced, highly respected in the business. Previous stints in executive education at University of Southern California, Emory, and others. And Kelly is really working fantastically on unifying our executive education offerings, both here in St. Louis, in this region, and in Washington, D.C. as well. And yeah, so I always love mentioning the address of our new facilities there, which is 1776 Massachusetts Avenue, which is kind of cool. And this was literally completed over the summer, and I went up there, we got the hard hat on and everything. I said, so when is this due to be finished? And the guy said, well, we're aiming for 4th of July. And I thought, he's joking, but actually it was completed around about 4th of July, right? So interesting. And I invite you, if you're in the DC area, please get in touch with me. We can arrange a tour of those facilities for you. Digital education. So this is something I've talked to you about. Like all of these, I really feel a sense of excitement, and that we spent my first year kind of talking to friends, stakeholders of the school, and thinking about the vision, mission for the school, developing a strategic direction, a strategic plan. And it's really exciting to see a lot of these things now actually happening. Like our new MBA is actually the first cohort of their being around the world, and they're back. We have our new career center that's actually operating in this newly restructured way. We have our relationship with Brookings has grown. We have actual facilities there. And something else that's actually happening is the digital education platform, right? So we hired a number of developers and managers to build a new platform, for example, which will be the kind of the next generation of virtual learning environment for students, right? So it will be outclass anything that's available commercially, and will give us the capability to engage with our students while they're here and throughout the rest of their careers, right? So we call this the digital building, right? So when our students actually leave the physical building, they never leave the digital building, right? So they can always hook into this virtual learning environment that will provide a way we can, and we'll talk about this in a moment, the way we can always remain with us, always Olin. And not only have we built the new digital platform, and that was road tested, like literally road tested by our MBA students over the summer, and we've been refining it to make sure it's really is first rate. And not only have we have this team actually building the platform with some of them located in the United Kingdom, where I could find the best talent in the world, as I've mentioned to you before, and actually here as well, we have videographers and studio managers here. We actually have the new studios, right? So literally there, just outside the auditorium here, and I invite you just to mill around and have a look, Just mill in there, make yourself a nuisance. It's great, right? We have our new studios, which I think there are 4 or 5 studios. We have a blueprint here, which has these major filming studios, webinar studios, an open plan space here for the faculty. This is absolutely state of the art. And part of the reason for doing this, as I say, is because we want to bring our programs up to date. Students now expect some content to be digital. And I like to stress this over and over again. This is not replacing the face-to-face engagement with students, right? It's always important. There is face-to-face engagement with staff, faculty, students. That is part of the overall student experience for full-time students. But it's just the way that it's done, right? So modern techniques of knowledge transfer, we call this, sometimes call this the flipping the classroom, means that we can actually transfer knowledge. If there's a body of things you need to know technically, we can teach you that online very, very efficiently by using behavioral science and psychology to think about ways, attention spans, we can get that across, not just recording a lecture, but the worst way of doing it. And then use the face-to-face experience for something that's a little bit more enriching, right, in terms of live case studies, discussion groups, and so forth. However, it does also give us the capability to launch online programs, fully online programs, right? And there, if a student really just wants to get a technical qualification in a certain area, then an online program may be a good way to do that, right? Because they may not be interested at that point in the student's experience. It's really just about getting a technical qualification, getting a knowledge in a certain area. And next year, we will be launching new programs completely online in business analytics, right? It's an area where people want to have expertise and knowledge really about how they can apply that in their field. There'll be certificates, so that people can do a certificate in just a few courses, or stack those up and get the full master's degree online. We're launching that in areas like fintech and customer analytics, which there's a strong demand for. And one of the reasons for doing that is that we'll be able to diversify our student base as well, right? So those programs will be marketed pretty much exclusively within the United States, so we can grow. So we have we have students coming from overseas. We'll also have a body of students on these online programs coming from the United States as well. And again, just thinking going forward about updating or just continuing to innovate on our executive MBA and PMBA programs. We're going to add blended elements to those as well. So there'll be face-to-face elements, but also elements where students will be able to study in their own time and their own time in terms of online programs, online elements, so they can arrive in the classroom really well equipped with that knowledge transfer there already. And we're talking with the Brookings Institution about ways we can collaborate, possibly in an executive MBA program as well. That's the picture of what it looks like. It doesn't do it full justice. So again, it's just literally just there. And there'll be it's like an unprepossessing door there at the moment. We actually have a full glass wall with a glass door, so people will be able to see the whole thing as you're passing by, but that has to be custom made. So that won't arrive until mid-October. But I don't see why you shouldn't just take a look while you're here now. Those pictures were actually literally taken last night or this morning, right? They wouldn't let us in there before. So it literally is absolutely brand new. And I think we have a staff moving in there next week, or maybe even later this week. Now, these things have to be done. This was amazing. This space, at the end of July, was a huge furniture store. Right? It was just a sort of basement, which we discovered we had sort of a bit of extra space. Let's use it. But we can only really do building work mainly in August or in parts of December and January when students are away from here, right? So because of the noise that's involved. So this has really been an amazingly a quickly constructed project, but to the very, very high standards and with the very, very latest high quality equipment. Okay, also underway. We have, it's being mindful of time. I want to leave some time for question and answers as well. But we have things like a new joint degree with the McKelvey School of Engineering, which launched this year. This is a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Business. And we are doing things like increasing our engagement with alumni. That's a strategic priority for the school. We have appointed for the first time in the school's history, we have an Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion, supported by a full-time program manager on diversity and inclusion, which we think is very, very important. And we have training programs in unbiased, unconscious bias training, for example, coming up this fall. Development priorities for school, just mention very briefly. Development, fundraising priorities going forward. Top of the list is scholarships. We offer the best business training in the world, and we want to make that accessible to everyone who can benefit from that, regardless of their economic background. We're expanding our faculty, especially amongst that mid-career level. And we're also promoting and encouraging our faculty here as they're doing even better in their research careers. So professorships in terms of endowed professorships is something that we've got a few in the pot left, but we need even more of those in order to fulfill our ambitions on the faculty and research side going forward. And of course, various strategic initiatives, like these state-of-the-art digital recording studios do not come cheap, I can tell you. But this leads me to this final slide, which is, again, thinking about what it means to be always Olin. Our vision is for Olin to be amongst the very top leading business schools in the world. And we continue to focus on strategic initiatives that elevate our reputation for excellence and raise us in the ranks for our students and our alumni. And many of the initiatives that I've discussed today, while they may seem to focus in some ways on current student experience, are really continue our we are committed to delivering continued value to our students and alumni throughout their entire careers, and their have this lifelong relationship. Part of our explicit mission statement is provide a return on investment for our students and alumni throughout their entire careers and lifetime. And Always Olin, which is kind of something we're thinking about if you like, an aspect of what we do here at Olin. It just encapsulates that, and we've got I don't know whether you can read the slide here, but basically it's a four-pronged approach that includes regular communication with our friends, with our alumni, including newsletters, an alumni community portal, which will be on this new new learning environment, the digital platform that we're developing, and we'll also offer personal career resources. Right, we already have dedicated alumni within the Career Centre that are happy to give careers advice and support to alumni. We're thinking about social engagement, the ways we can interact more on a social level and facilitate engagement amongst our alumni, both here in St. Louis and the Midwest. We also have things like happy hours and social events. Recently we've had them in Chicago, in New York, and on the West Coast. And we also want to provide lifelong learning opportunities, right? I'm a firm believer. In fact, I've acquired much of my learning throughout various points in my life, and we want to be able to offer opportunities for our alumni to do that. In fact, and just this week, we appointed Professor Andrew Knight. Many of you will know is Professor of Organizational Behavior. He is now designated and the first director of lifelong learning, and he'll be working with faculty and staff to bring the great content from our classrooms and programs and make them available to our alumni going forward. So, I say once students arrive here, they don't get out of the virtual building, if you like, if an occasionally get out of the physical building. But we also want to make sure that we capture and make sure that our broader alumni population is also engaged with us going forward as well. And so we'd certainly like to talk to you about that. I would also like to, some of these things we're doing, like careers resources and mentoring, for example. You could help us and get involved in being part of the supply side of those relationships as well. Okay, that covers pretty much all of that. I'm pretty much on time where I've got to. I'd like to open up for questions, but let me say, this is just some highlights of what we're doing in the school. I hope you'll agree it's very, very exciting. It's wonderful to see all these things actually happening, right? Instead of just being at a planning stage or talking stage. And I'd like to thank you for your commitment to the Olin community and for joining us at the Century Club today. So, without further ado, I'd love to take some questions. Thank you. We have a roving mic.
Thank you for all this great information. I'm excited. I almost want to return and re-enroll all over again, but I won't. You mentioned doubling down on our faculty, and you also mentioned in one of the previous slides that one of your initiatives will be diversity and inclusion. Can you describe what diversity and inclusion looks like in terms of faculty recruitment?
Okay, so we are committed to diversity and inclusion. We, all of our recruitment procedures go through certain ways in which we can enhance that, right? One of the things I'm very proud of, for example, is the gender diversity in the school, which has increased dramatically over the last 3 years. I think in my first year here, we hired 5 faculty, for example, and they were all women, and because they were the best candidates, to be honest. And so it's a matter of really reaching out and making sure that that we have the best candidates applying to the program. Well, applying to programs as well, and we had increased gender diversity there, but also in terms of our faculty as well. We have, not to say that there's always improvements, right? And that's why we have appointed Julie McLean-Parks as our first Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion. That's why we have Jackie Carter-Slack as our Program Manager, actually working on ways we can improve that. And it goes through not only in terms of recruitment of our faculty and our staff and our students, where we have seen advances in that, but also in terms of where we go about our business from day to day. So a big chunk of what we're doing over the next few months is just to think about unconscious bias training, things that people do unconsciously in terms of about thinking about being biased, and the way we can address that in the school. So it's something that's it's right there at the center in what we're doing.
St. Louis is developing a growing relationship for its incubators for entrepreneurs. Are there any formal ties between the school and places like Cortex?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm glad you asked me about this. We have a number of initiatives where we can engage with the local community in terms of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurialism. For example, through our small business initiatives, where we have teams of students working in practicums, in real live team-based consultancy projects with small businesses throughout the area. We have just appointed a very experienced local entrepreneur, Doug Vilhard, as the professor of practice in entrepreneurship, and to lead that initiative. In fact, Doug and I are working right now. In fact, I have a meeting coming up next week with Cortex to think about ways we can actually have an implant in there, right? So the university has an implant in there, and engineering has something down there. We think we should have a presence down there as well. And we're talking about ways we can do that. And Callie Bean, our new Director of Executive Education, has thought perhaps we can actually have some of our executive education people based down in Cortex, thinking about ways we can interact with that community. Now that's really important, because we see a shift in the economy of this region. We still have the big companies here, but many of the headquarters moving out of town. It's kind of shifting towards that more entrepreneurship and innovation. That's something that we are strongly committed to being involved in. And in fact, I think how we rank against other schools, we're kind of benchmarking against our number of startups, the number of engagements with entrepreneurs in the local region. And it's not time to pat us on the back. We compare extremely well to other business schools. But in terms of your specific answer, yes, we are, even as we speak, developing that relationship with Cortex. Yeah, and we'll announce something on that, hopefully in the next month or two.
Dean Taylor, yeah, a graduate of WashU, but I've been away from the school for a while. I was wondering, can you explain what the requirements of the faculty are to maintain their status, to retain their professionalism, to retain their knowledge of their discipline?
Faculty are reviewed annually, and I personally will look at all faculty, and I will personally have a one-to-one interview with all tenured faculty throughout the year. over the course of the year to look at their progress in a number of areas. As a research-driven school, for tenured faculty, research output is extremely important. But as we mentioned in our mission statements, we want to produce world-changing research, which is capable of changing the world in an important way. So we're actually looking for innovative research, and we're looking for research that is impactful. So when we're assessing a faculty member and their accomplishments, yes, we'll look at their publications in top journals. We'll also look at their citations, that's to say how many other academics are being influenced by that, and are citing those papers in their research. And we'll also look at their impacts on the business and wider community. So I mentioned, for example, one of our top professors, Anjan Thacker, having publications in the Harvard Business Review and publishing books not really aimed at an academic audience, but more at a business and industry audience, right? So we're looking at that wider impact as well. We don't get away from the fact that the core is always world-class research, right? We're also supplementing our tenured faculty with teaching faculty and professors of practice. Like I mentioned, Doug Villard, for example, is highly experienced serial entrepreneur, knows the St. Louis mid-region well as entrepreneurship throughout the country. And he's come here as a professor of practice, which is something we've expanded somewhat over the last 3 years. People who have reached the kind of the equivalent of a full professorship in terms of prestige and standing and achievement, and then can give some feedback to our academics and our students as to how to get involved in real business and industry decisions. So there are a range of issues there that we're thinking about.
Thank you, Dean Taylor. I'm an Mba alum, and I saw on their slide that a review is underway of Mbas. So I'm eager to hear more from you in terms of what you hope to get out of that review, or what are the big questions that you're hoping the review will answer? Thank you.
Well, I think I firmly believe, and unless you're constantly thinking about moving up, you're moving down, right? Because the world's changing, and your comparative competitors are changing. So really, again, just like we went through a review of various aspects of the school, we just think about ways our EMBA program we might innovate on that, right? So one element, for example, is digital education, right? And I'm very careful when I talk about this, because there's a debate about, can you really teach an MBA online? And then a lot of schools are actually doing this now, right? So the University of Illinois, for example, recently announced that it was only offering online MBAs. Yeah, we don't have any plans to get into that space. But if you are doing an executive MBA, then it does make sense to, in some sense, make at least the knowledge transfer element to try to facilitate that. So you can do elements in your own time, at your own just the time to suit you, to your convenience. And then when you use your very, very precious time, right, to arrive on campus, we can make the most of that, right? So it's really trying to leverage everything at our disposal to make the best of your time with the EMBAs with us, right? So that face-to-face time is not going to change, right? We're also thinking about ways we can, as I say, some of the things we did on the executive MBA were so successful, they spilled over into the full-time MBA. So often when I speak to recent Mba graduates, I say, what do you remember? What was the most interesting part of the program? They said, well, it was all interesting, but things that stick out I really enjoyed were the Brookings experience in Washington, D.C., and the experience in Shanghai. And I would never have gone to Shanghai unless you made me do it, but in fact, it was really valuable. And so we're thinking about ways we might be able to enhance that, mindful of, and this is, that's why we're involving Mba alumni and stakeholders, mindful of, it's all very well to say, okay, you should go here, should go there, thinking about work-life balance as well. And I'm very mindful of this because I'm an executive MBA graduate myself from London University. But there are things like, could we offer, would students be interested in doing overseas electives. So we have an understanding now with the Zade Business School in Barcelona, who helps us with our full-time Spanish component, and it's one of the top business schools in the world, and certainly one of the top in Europe. And we have an exchange elective agreement. So their students can come and do electives on our executive MBA program, and conversely, our students can go and do electives in English, I should say, either in Madrid or in Barcelona, spend a week there, and that will count towards their degree here. We're also thinking about ways we can bring together our executive MBA programs, which we have elsewhere in the world, right? So we're very successful MBA program in Shanghai. And we have another, MBA program in Mumbai in India. We think about ways, instead of just operating them while they're just separately in those 3 locations, how they can come together for some of that time, right? And in fact, our full-time MBA, while they're in Shanghai, actually met up with the executive MBAs and alumni from the Shanghai program and interacted that way. But we'd like to have more interaction from our executive MBA program here as well. We're also thinking about ways, the Brookings experience is often cited as being very valuable. Could we enhance that in some way, right? But these things are under discussion at the moment. If we are speaking to Mba alums to think about ways we can do that. But it's just think about ways we can innovate and make sure that that program, which is extremely important to us, continues to be world class.
You spoke a little bit about making the education accessible to everybody. Can you speak a little bit more about the impending student debt crisis from a broader perspective, and then specifically initiatives that you have planned to make the education more accessible?
Yeah, I mean, when I mentioned development objectives here, i.e. fundraising objectives, first and foremost amongst that is scholarships, basically, right? And we are conscious that this is not the least expensive school in the country to attend by any means, right? And but we want to do all we can to make sure that we are accessible, especially at an undergraduate level, but also at a graduate level, but especially at an undergraduate level to the best students in the country or the best students internationally, regardless of their means. So that is something that I'm working very hard with alumni and development to think about going forward. Yeah, that will be primary objective during the time that I'm dean. That if one day I will cease to be dean, right? But at that time, I'd like to say we had this great achievement in terms of endowed scholarships, particularly. More questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, this is a question really about the long view. My understanding is there's what we call a high school cliff coming in 2026 with entering freshmen, because 18 years after the financial crisis, if you go back to 2008, people stopped having kids. And so universities and colleges are very concerned about, how do we compete for that future in 2026? So I know it's a long ways off, but I'm just wondering if there's dialogue here already about how to plan for that situation in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, and obviously we are thinking about that. That would impact that will impact first on our BSBA, on our undergraduate applications. Now, as it happens, we are mindful of this, and we're thinking about this, doing some horizon scanning. But in fact, we are completely oversubscribed on our undergraduate program, right? So our acceptance rate hovers around 10%, something like that. So 90% of students that apply do not get a placement, and many of those students are extremely strong, right? And the university as a whole caps its student population around 7,000. Because the university believes it doesn't have the facilities to go beyond that and wants to offer a very, very special, high quality undergraduate experience. And of that 7,000, we get about 10%, right? So the fact that we are very, very constrained, we don't see any major problems, right? But I don't want to be complacent about that, right? But I don't see that as a major problem for this school, but we will be horizon scanning and thinking about ways we can cope with that going forward. Do you want to ask a question?
On the Reboot program, is that actually a requirement for the MBA students?
It is.
And is that part of their tuition?
It is. Well, let me answer that.
Do they pay for it, or?
That's a good question. So, let me tell you a little bit more about the Mba Reboot. So there are two elements. I only told you about one here today. One is when we did some studies. There is data on this. There is also anecdotal evidence. I meet with other deans at deans conferences and so forth periodically. Recently, a few weeks ago, met with the deans conference, and we talked about the international trends in MBAs, and there is a decline in demand internationally, and certainly within this country, of full-time MBAs. And then at the school, we did some market research. Why is that? And partly it's because people are thinking, well, instead of doing an MBA, I'll go and do one of these new MS in data analytics that is offered here. I'll do a specialist master in finance, we and others are offering, which are relatively new. Or it may be that prospective students think, well, 2 years is a long time, actually, to be out of the workforce. And I'm going to lose 2 years' salary. And some programs are now 1 year, and there's some 1-year programs in Europe. So we basically made the program much more flexible. We also spoke to our other stakeholders, students, alumni, and said, would you like a 1-year program? And some said, yes, we'd love that. And others said, no, we'd hate that, right? Veterans, for example, we have a strong tradition of vets, military vets, coming to Olin, and they prefer the 2-year option, because it gives them time to reflect, do an internship or two, and think about what to do in the next phase of their careers. So to cut a long story short, there's a flexibility in the program as well now. So you can complete the program in just over a year, say 14 months. And it's intensive. Doesn't cut any corners. It's just very intensive. The same number of credit hours. Or you can take the usual, the traditional 2 years of internships and so forth. Or you can do it in maybe 26 months, just over 2 years, and get your 2 degrees, right? You can actually get the MBA and an MS in data analytics, or an MS in finance as well. So there is that flexibility. And then there is this international component as well, bolted on the front. So the combination of those makes this a unique program, right? It is without doubt the most international full-time MBA program in the world. Now, to answer your question, have the fees risen to reflect that? And the answer is no. Right? We've been able to we increased our fees by some usual university inflation factor, 3% or so, from last year to this year, even though we bolted on this international component. And we have been able to, because of other improvements in the school's finance in other areas, we're able to subsidize that, right? And we regard that as a strong investment in the school. And going forward, because this is an important flagship program for the school, we'll see how that develops going forward, whether we will continue to subsidize it, or whether going forward, if there is stronger and stronger demand for the program, whether we would raise fees, right? But if we did raise fees, we'd obviously think about ability to pay as well, and think about scholarships to support that. But we are at a discount of 10 or 20, 30,000 from some of the schools that we would are aspirational schools. So there is ability to bring that back, but it's something, an investment that we're thinking about at the moment going forward. Go on, Bill. I know all about this. Okay.
Since we're solving international problems today, and the Chancellor gave you a day off, paid day, and you could return to the UK, how do we solve the Brexit?
How do we solve the Brexit problem? So Bill told me who's going to answer this, and my answer is this. It's like, how would I solve an intractable problem? Well, the fact that we're in the United States now, allows me to take the Fifth Amendment. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. So thank you all for coming.